all the kind of peculiar corkscrew systems they've got, and, and all that tasting, and oh God, it just drives me crazy. This is where the contrast is. You don't get people in the supermarket going, shall we have the special brew or the super tannins? Which is your preference? Do you like that bit? I don't know. I did it in a Scottish accent, but do you like that? Do you like the special brew better than? So I like the flavour of super tannins on me. And I think that the aftertaste is very nice. I think, like, shut up. Just get a bottle and drink it, for God's sake.
You were twisted through seven.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica.
And I'm Chip. We're dropping surnames. Are we not doing surnames?
Yeah, I feel that we have a level of fame.
Okay, right.
Everybody knows us by our first names.
Right, yeah. Fortunately, we have moderately unusual names, so that helps.
Yeah, that's true. Since my kids have been back to school, somebody has been sick in our house. Like, we just pass it around. It's like tag. Anyway, how are you?
Heidi and I went away on a couple of very, very simple little trips in England. We had beautiful weather both times. We hung out with some Soberful people for a week, which was fabulous, up in Yorkshire. That was absolutely
nice.
Great. And then we went away again on our own, and all we did was just sit and read and take it easy, and suited us just fine. Yeah.
Lovely.
And
lovely.
And I've had a very, very fortuitous little set of events which nobody needs to know about, only that it's made my life a lot better. And yeah, so I've had a good summer.
Good. And now it's fall, and I've moved to Alabama.
Yes, I did hear that.
South.
Yeah, and I think one has to be very respectful of that decision, because I don't think historically it doesn't feel like it's a good place to criticize. You don't criticize Alabama.
I want to tell you,
is it nice down there?
It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely, and I will tell you, I had a lot of preconceived ideas.
Yeah,
that have been proved to be incorrect. And we've only been here a couple of months, so it's we're still in the honeymoon period. But in terms of, it's beautiful. The town we live in is gorgeous, southern, like New Orleans style architecture, on the water, on the Gulf. The schools are fantastic. The people are amazing, so friendly. I love the southern charm. I really like that my kids are saying yes, sir, and no, ma'am. Like, I really like that.
Yeah.
Lots of diversity. I'm sure it's not perfect in like most places. How's it? It's downside. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, I really, really like it here. And the cost of living and the weather, it's pretty good. So,
but it can be quite strong down there. Quite prone to a tornado or two.
Hurricanes. You can get tornadoes. You can, but we're in the hurricane alley. Let's talk about. Go on.
Well, it was just that there's somebody who I used to really like reading. I think it's Truman Capote, who used to write about that kind of, what's it called? Antebellum for architecture. That's kind of and all the
southern architecture. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who it is who wrote about it, but I really enjoyed it. But anyway, enough of that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about high-end drinking, and it's really a rationalization people have. And I'll give you an example of it. I was on the Doctors TV show in America. It's like, you probably have something similar in England. It's called The Doctors, and they're doctors who talk about all kinds of things that doctors talk about.
Yeah.
And I was on there talking about my book. They still had COVID regulations, so it was on Zoom. And I was in a waiting room with another doctor who was coming on to talk with me. And she was a nutritional doctor, private doctor in LA. And she spent the entire time telling me why she didn't have an alcohol problem. Even though she drank every day and she was a high-end doctor, private clients, she had started to drink more during COVID, and she told her teenage son that she was going to cut down, and he'd laugh. And she said, but a lot of her clients owned vineyards in Napa, which is Northern California, which is the wine area of California.
Yeah.
And it's where all of the good wine in America comes from. A lot of her clients owned vineyards, and she only drank extremely fine wine from Napa. So her drinking was fine because she didn't drink anything that wasn't extremely expensive and made with very pure organic grapes. And we went on the program, and they really wanted me to lean towards giving tips for cutting down. I found that when I was promoting my book, all of the journalists and producers The only people who wanted to interview me were the journalists and producers who were sober curious, or loved someone who was sober. Everyone else wanted me to give tips for cutting down.
Yeah.
You've probably had this experience as
Yeah.
well. And so they were leaning towards that. And she said, I'm fine if my clients have 2 glasses of wine a night. And my eyebrows shot up, because that's not the medical guidance. That's
Not at all.
actually
Especially
a lot of alcohol.
Especially not the glasses that are made today to put wine in. That's
Yeah,
probably,
and especially not women.
No, and that's probably the normal glass of wine. I'm sure in America the same as way nowadays is over.
They're like
at least
buckets.
2 glasses of wine. It's what a night. That's
Yes.
well. I mean that's. I mean,
yeah. It was delusional.
I'm glad we're talking about this, because I think this is a real problem for people with because we've got so caught up historically, particularly over the word alcoholic, that we all say anything other than alcoholic. We'll say anything other than that. We'll say alcohol dependent. We'll have substance misuse. We'll have problem alcohol drinker. We'll do because people have such a reaction to alcoholic, because an alcoholic is low end, park bench, drinks in the morning, shakes in the morning, absolutely chronic. And so anybody who compares themselves to that cannot possibly have a problem. So if you own a house, if you've got a nice painted front door, if you've got family who go to nice private schools, if you've got a job, you cannot possibly have an alcohol problem, or even because you can't say have an alcohol problem without sort of saying, well, I'm not an alcoholic. The problem is, how much do what I really want to say to that woman so you drink very expensive alcohol. I mean, you're still drinking alcohol. It doesn't matter.
Still ethanol.
Still ethanol. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter how expensive it is. Some people drink really, really cheap beer. I used to drink a very, very common, very strong beer over here that only people with alcohol problems drink. And it didn't cost very much. But, other people drink. And that thing about I only drink a bottle a night, that's what so many people say to me. They say, well, we don't have a problem. We just drink a bottle of wine a night. That's way over what you're supposed to be drinking. Actually, anything over 0 is more than you're supposed to be drinking, but we'll have that discussion at another time. But it's certainly over the recommended limits. It's as you said, it's a terribly well constructed fortress around problem drinking, that we can stand behind our fortress and look out down below at all the people who are shuffling along the street with a bottle in their hand, and we are not like that. Therefore, we cannot have a problem. And I think the big problem is not only is that it prevents people from getting help, because it prevents people from acknowledging they've got a problem. Because if I've got a problem, then my friend John has got a problem, and my friend Mary's got a problem, because we all drink like that. So it challenges people, and I think it's a real problem, because so many people would get help much earlier. I mean, this week I've been dealing with somebody who incredibly well constructed, in all the kind of household stuff, job-wise, finance, business, drinking 200 units of alcohol a week, absolutely massive liver count. I mean, liver count beyond the second highest liver count I've ever seen in my whole career. But he couldn't possibly be an alcoholic because he's got all these things. And it's stunning the way it kind of buys into people's denial. And I suppose we're always looking for things that justify our denial that we have a problem.
It's such a successful rationalization. Like so many, there's a lot of ritual that goes on with drinking, right? There's a whole kind of ritualistic process. Like I've had clients, like the whole thing about whiskey, and going and going to see where it's made, and smelling the wood and the testing of the whiskey, and taking pilgrimages. Like, I mean, I think the classic one is going to Dublin and having Guinness, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's pilgrimages that people take where, a place is famous for a particular alcoholic drink. And all of that does involve kind of money and time. And, I know craft beer is another one, like the craft kind of all of that kind of stuff. And I'm not, I think that there's some people who can enjoy the artistry of the alcoholic drink and they don't have an alcohol problem, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm also really suspicious when, I don't know, people make a vacation out of it. I'm like, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's alcohol. It doesn't matter how you dress it up.
I know.
Alcohol is taking up a lot of space.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
yeah, I go to restaurant. I mean, I go to the same where I stay in London. I go to the same club, and where I stay in London, and I have to watch people eat their evening meal. And the wine waiter comes along and says, "What would you?" And I've seen people go, "What should we have? Should we have the Chardonnay with the fish, or should we have?" And or no, what do you reckon? I mean, that last time we had that white wine, that Sauvignon Blanc, what Sauvignon Blanc, wasn't that nice? And I want to go, just shut up. Just get a bottle and drink it, for God's sake. Stop faffing about. But people go to, I mean, and you said that ritual. People, take and ask people to come to supper. Well, I've got this, and they'll ceremoniously bring out this bottle of wine, and they'll show them the sort of slightly old label, and go, this is this, and the ritual, all the kind of
Yeah,
fancy
yeah.
corkscrews, all the kind of peculiar corkscrew systems they've got, and and all that tasting, and and oh God, it just drives me crazy. This is where the contrast is. You don't get people in the supermarket going, shall we have the special brew or the super tannins? Which is your preference? Do you like that bit? I don't know. I did it in a Scottish accent, but do you like that? Do you like the special brew better than the super tannins? I like the flavour of super tannins on me. And I think that the aftertaste is very nice. I think, like, shut up, just buy it, and they do. They just buy it because they just want. They don't fuss about like that. But
I'm not interested in the taste, the color, the ritual. I'm
they
interested in
just
how
want
quickly
the
I get the
alcohol.
buzz.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And there's something more honest about that. It's a lot of camouflage. It's just camouflage.
Camouflage. That's the camouflage.
Yeah,
That's the word. I was going to use the word smokescreen.
yeah,
It's a very elaborate smokescreen where when you strip it all back,
yeah,
it's actually about you being able to taste whiskey at 10 a.m. in the morning and get a
yeah,
buzz on at 10.
exactly.
But it's a very elaborate that looks very acceptable.
With drug addicts, although even then, people get a bit sort of. This is very fine. This comes straight from Colombia, straight from Pablo Escobar's own supply, and it's very high. Unlike the street stuff, I don't touch that stuff. I only have high-end coke, or I only have marijuana grown on the western slopes of the Nicaraguan hillside or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
we'll go to enormous lengths to make what is actually just the consumption of alcohol a fancy pantsy kind of ritual that makes it okay. I give people an exercise to do, and about kind of looking at how it affects their social life and their work life and their financial life, and then it begins to have a little bit more of an impact, because as you start to sort of, once you start, you have to really be quite direct with people like that. When people are saying, "Well, I don't have a problem," because it's so well camouflaged, because it's so well defended. I tend to use a bit of a battering ram to get through that. And when I'm confronted with somebody who goes, "Look, not quite sure why I'm here. Somebody says I drink too much, but I've still got a job. I drink like everybody else," which is something I'll come back to in a minute. So I tend to go, "Well, if that's the case, just stop for 2 weeks, or just stop for a week." And that's my sort of battering ram. And that'll often usually stop people in their tracks a little bit. And they'll go, "Well, that's a bit strong, old chap. That's a bit strong." And having not lost very much yet can often cause people to delay getting help, which is a problem, because, if you're waiting until you are a park bench drinker, I don't know about in America, but in this country, I think it's about 20 to 30,000 people die a year of
Mm.
alcohol-related conditions. Now, you don't see 20 to 30,000 park bench drinkers. So where are they coming from? They're not all coming from sink estates in wherever. They're coming from all structures of society. From every single layer of society, you're getting people dying from alcohol consumption. Doesn't matter whether
Mm.
you're rich or poor.
Mm.
This is a condition that knows no social boundaries at all. It will hit you, and you can try and defend yourself, and you'll put off help for quite a long time. You'll put off getting help for a long time, much longer than is necessary, because you've got all these things. And I think that's why
Mm.
you will often get people who've got, and sounds a bit, people who've got much less lose it very much
Mm.
quicker. So they hit
Yeah.
bottom very quickly. if you've
Money
got
solves a lot of
money, does
problems,
solve a lot of problems. Yeah, and
and it
you know,
takes away a lot of consequences.
absolutely, yeah. And that's the other thing that I was going to say is that people will often say, well, that's what all architects do. That's what all finance people do. We all do that. It's something that we all do. And I'm sure I've said this before on So Before. I've never yet had a profession sat in front of me where the person doesn't say, well, all builders do that at the end of the day. All bricklayers do this at the end of the day. All doctors do this at the end of the day. Or everybody somehow justifies their profession as being the reason that they drink. And finance industry, it's a high end industry. It's absolutely classic one for saying, well, that's what we do. That's what we do. Well, yeah, it may be what you do, but I think it's a great shame because it means that people often don't get treatment till it's too late.
Yeah, I have had many clients like that, and it helps keep them in denial, and it helps just it's
Yeah.
such a great rationalization, because the biggest motivator to change is pain. So I'm remembering when I was back in the day when I was drinking, I worked for a brief time at Aubergine, which was Gordon Ramsay's first restaurant
Oh
before
yeah,
he
yeah,
became really famous.
yeah.
I got fired because I was often hungover. But I do remember, because I mean, I'd never been in a restaurant that there was that level. That I think he had a Michelin star by then, but it was Princess Diana ate there. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
high. It was in Chelsea. Anyway, all of his wait staff were French because they apparently do. So there was a expert waiter for every course and every alcohol. It was kind of incredible. So there was a waiter who his job was the after dinner cognacs, and he had this kind of antique trolley thing with various different, every cognac you could think of worth thousands. Some of them were worth tens of
Yeah, yeah,
thousands.
yeah.
And he could talk about the history and the this and the that, and then he could pour. They had the cognac glasses, and what he could do is they would choose the cognac, and he could pour it into the glass without measuring it. And every single time, the way to measure how much like the perfect serving of cognac was you then put the glass on the side, so it was resting on its side, and the drink would just come perfectly up to the lip and not spill. And he could do that every single time by sight. And
Uh-huh.
it's almost like a party trick.
Yeah,
And people loved that because it was so, the level of sophistication of that, like it was such a thing. Like it was almost like he was talking about art. He could talk about 300 years ago, these monks in
yeah,
France and da 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 da.
yeah.
It was really quite a thing. And I remember there was one table once where all the waiters kind of knew this. I actually feel like he was a member of parliament, but I don't know who it was. Everyone knew that he needed to be managed.
Hmm.
Like as the evening wore on, he had every single, there was the aperitif, there was the wine, there was the champagne, there was and by the time it got to, and they were there for 3 hours, like this guy was going to need to be managed so
Yep.
that he didn't cause a scene and embarrass himself. And everyone was kind of geared around like just letting him drink copious amounts of extremely expensive alcohol and
Hmm.
then managing him delicately into his car to go home. And like that was one of the best examples of high-end drinking.
Yeah,
It's all deemed to be appropriate. It's like, oh, it's just
yeah,
how he gets,
yeah, yeah.
and I think he must have had 12 drinks or something. It was a lot. Nobody thinks that's a problem. And
Well,
the bill, I can't even tell you, would make your eyes water.
yeah. No, I'm sure. No, I know. They're called sommeliers.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I've got a
Well,
friend who
I thought they were, are they,
are
I
the
thought they were just for
sommeliers.
wine. Is that for cognac
Oh,
as well?
wine is for sommelier. Yeah, I guess you
Oh,
probably
okay.
get cognac sommeliers. I've
Right.
got a friend who's got a company called Sober Sommelier, and he does non-alcoholic gins and things like that.
Huh.
So, yeah, but it's all about ritualizing. It's still alcohol. It's still the same old substance. It's just. I'm sure it tastes delicious. I'm sure it does taste delicious. And actually, once in my life, I was taken out by one of my godfathers, and I did have it was a Gevrey Chambertin, and I thought, well, that does taste really nice, but it's still just alcohol. It's expensive and it tastes beautiful, but then so do other things. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't need to pay 1,000. You're very welcome to do what you like with your money, but I just think it's. But don't pretend it's anything other than what it is. It's a very, very nice tasting bit of ethanol. Be very careful if you are in a nice home and you do have a good job and
Mm.
you do have a habit of drinking every night. That's a
Yeah.
warning sign. That's something you should be warning of.
Yeah.
Ask your teenage children if they notice whether you have a drink problem or not. That'll probably be a bit of a
Yeah.
wake up call to you, because they will notice if you've drunk half a bottle of wine with your partner at the end of the night, you're not as available as you were at the beginning of the night. That's a good test, is to ask your 10-year-old children, who you will say doesn't have any idea at all about my drinking. Well, you ask them, and I'll bet you
Yeah.
they'll have a response to that. They go to lovely schools, and that's another. I mean, I come from that kind of background, and I know how often that is put forward as an excuse. Don't talk to me about my alcohol problem. I sent you to the best school in the country. Look at this lovely house. Look at all the things we've done for you. Look at all the money we've spent on you. As a way of trying to kind of justify the fact that they've been quite absent as parents. Actually, they've been not really as available as they could be. They've been slightly absent every night, because alcohol does make you absence yourself from the kind of what's actually going on. And in lots of cases, one of the ways in which I sometimes challenge my high-end clients is to say, okay, you're at home in the evening, what would happen if your child had an accident? Could you drive them to the hospital? Well, no, I couldn't.
Mm.
I'd have to call the ambulance. Well, good luck with that in the UK at the moment. But,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to do that sort of thing. And so sometimes you have to really, I find you have to be quite harsh. I mean, you have to be
So
quite
the
direct.
so the other thing is that I find interesting, because we've never had this before. And we've talked about the alcohol-free market and how it's exploded. And you have a friend who's a sober, I can never say the word, sommelier. That I can't say it. I'm dyslexic because of my dyslexia. Because I've said this to a couple of clients, but I just can't, when they've said, I can't imagine, Friday night and my husband makes this lovely dinner and we have a really nice bottle of wine and I'm like, there's tons of alcohol-free
Yeah,
products on the market. Why don't you choose? And now I have heard, I never drank alcohol for the taste. It was always the buzz, always the
completely. Yeah,
buzz.
always.
I don't really feel like I ever, I mean, maybe a couple of times, but it was like, I need to change how I feel. That was it.
Hmm.
So a lot of people tell me, who have been fine wine connoisseurs, that the alcohol-free market is still not great. There's nothing
Yeah,
great. But I bet there will be soon. I mean, it's an exploding market. I bet there will be some very, very great, high-level wines and whiskeys that are alcohol-free. And for me, that's the test. It's like, well, you can still have a glass and it can still come from a beautiful bottle and you can still pay $100 for it.
hmm,
And you can still get that lovely glug, glug, glug sound. And you can still get the smell. It just doesn't contain ethanol. So you can still do all of those things that you want to do. And they're always like, no.
no,
Because what it is it's about the ethanol.
that's my experience.
Yeah, going back to my doctor that I was telling you about at the beginning of the show, I could really tell that it really bothered her, that she'd sort of mentioned to her son, and her son had laughed
Yeah,
like, yeah, that's going to happen.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really bothered her, and she really spent 45 minutes seeing me as a peer, even though I'm not a doctor, but an expert in
yeah,
addiction, justifying why she didn't have an alcohol problem. And it all rested on the fact that she only drank fine wine from Napa. And
yeah.
I'm going to tell you, wine connoisseurs are just really boring. I just find them really boring. And it's a smokescreen more often than not. I'm just really suspicious when people just invest a lot of energy into this. I'm kind of thinking about, you do this with your watches but it's like, that's your hobby, right? And it's not I know you love your fancy watches and you're really into the
Oh,
watches
I am
and
a
all that kind of,
terrible.
and that's your hobby and
Yeah,
you love it and it
yeah,
brings you joy and
yeah,
all of that, and having a good nice watch, and there's a history and all that kind of stuff. I feel like there's a kind of purpose to that. There's the engineering of it. It's interesting, if that's your thing.
yeah.
But I just kind of feel like with alcohol, like people can have that same, like it's their thing and they order, and I'm just like, but really, let's just be honest here. It's
Mhm.
just about getting fucked up.
Yeah.
Really. That's
Yeah.
all it is. Like
Yeah.
you can do the tours and the trips and the fancy this, that, and the other. But really, at the end of the day, you're just getting fucked up. Really.
It's about the
And I'm
buzz.
like, don't
Well,
spare me the details of the
yeah.
300-year monastery and ugh.
Yeah. It's about, do I feel a buzz afterwards? Because if you were to drink
Yeah.
a 300 bottle of wine, or much, I mean, that's cheap by some standards, but a 300 pound
Yeah.
bottle of wine, if you weren't slightly inebriated at the end of it, you'd want your money back. You'd go, well, what the hell was that? What was that?
Yeah.
But monsieur, it tasted so beautiful with your meal. Yeah, but I didn't get drunk. But monsieur, it complemented the meat and the duck so nicely. And but I don't want it to do. Yeah, yes, but that's what you said at the beginning, sir. You said which wine goes with this meat, and I gave you one, and now you're saying it's not right because you're not drunk. It's like that's what would happen. If you weren't slightly squishy at the end of a meal like
Yeah.
that, you'd want your money back.
And here's the thing. I could spend $20 on a bottle of Smirnoff or a couple of bottles of wine and get shit faced. Or I
Yeah,
could spend two or $20,000 on 2 bottles of something. The end
yeah,
result is we're still shit faced, right?
yeah,
The result
exactly.
is
Yeah,
the same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It happens. I mean, the
But
same the
yeah.
same snobbery happens with whether you're drinking a low end vodka or a really really this vodka is so
Mm,
smooth, and if you have it with ice and this and that, and shut up.
mm,
I'm
yeah.
I don't care whether you sit on a £6,000 sofa or a £20 sofa. It's still what is what is your drinking like? How do you feel about alcohol? How do you feel when you don't have alcohol? How do you feel when you have had alcohol? Those are the questions that you need to be asking yourself, and try to come out from behind your citadel of ritualistic and ritualized sort of protection and just look at your drinking.
Yeah. 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 So this has been our episode on high-end drinking, because we've talked about this a few times and we wanted to dedicate an episode that really it's high-end drinking, the fine wine, the fine cognac, the trips to Italy's vineyards, all that kind of stuff is just a very, very elaborate smoke screen for just wanting to get a buzz. We'd love to know your thoughts on this. What do you think? Do you recognize yourself? Do you recognize anybody else? Do you think we're wrong, or do you think we're onto something? Let us know on social media when this episode comes out what you think. And we will be back next week. Thank you so much, Chip.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye bye.